Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY and you can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and now TikTok at Tokyo Station Pens, and on Twitter at Tokyo Station MNH.
And my name is Jacob and I'm Foodafan on Instagram and on Twitter. I have a blog at foodafan.com and I don't have a TikTok account.
Well, you don't have TikTok. I mean, you gotta start making one. Gotta claim all the handles, Jacob.
I gotta do that, yes.
That's why Pen Addict is Dowdyism on Twitter. Couldn't claim the handles. All right.
I see.
Yeah. All right. So, we've gone what? This is 41? Quite a long way, and we've developed a good routine with our intros by starting to read the reviews, because these review readings are really to show appreciation for our listeners, and also to really understand and listen to listener feedback. So the first one, I'll just get straight into it, is from, I believe you pronounce this, Jeff Pleat. And Jeff Pleat via Apple Podcast says, great show, 5 stars. Just started listening and really enjoying the deeper discussions and the great perspectives offered by the hosts, especially their insight to the details of Japanese stationery businesses. Jacob?
That's what we're aiming for, so thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeff. I think, this just really, as we've said time and time again, this show also helps us learn, helps us grow. So thank you so much for putting up with us and listening to the show.
And I think it's fair to say that our podcast is like a niche within a niche within a niche. So it's good to hear that people appreciate the extreme geekery about things that you would think no one else would care about.
Yeah. All right. The second review is from Tiny Gummy via Apple Podcasts from the United States. And Tiny Gummy says, authentic opinions and high quality information, 5 stars. This was the first fountain pen podcast I listened to and will always be a favorite. CY and Jacob are an amazing amalgam of friends I'd like to go pen and paper shopping with, investigative reporters who take the time to track down and verify information direct from the source instead of passing on hearsay or speculation, and news reporters keeping me informed about new pen and paper products and trends. Additionally, they seem to have little concern about not offending people, which is refreshing. LOL.
That's you. That's
me. They simply tell it like it is. I find their authenticity and friendly banter, brackets even when disagreeing, makes for a charming podcast I'm able to learn a lot from. They cover everything from events to places to shop, places not to shop, historical aspects of pen and paper companies, the people who have molded the industry into what it has become, and more. Every episode is fun and interesting. Thank you so much to both of you for putting in the time and the effort to create such a high-quality podcast.
Thank you for that. And I'm curious about this reputation for doing investigations and reporting. Is that our thing now? Has it become our thing?
I personally don't really know. It's fun to ask directly at the source, right? Because then you're getting information that is correct. I think sometimes we do have to rely on secondary and tertiary sources.
Yeah.
But everything that we say is as far as our knowledge correct, right? And then if we have an opportunity to build on that knowledge, that's always something that's very welcome, I think. So, we're not like...
And we do have a bit of a teaser. We do have some interesting new first-hand information in this episode, so look forward to that.
I have a suspicion that teaser will be in the title. Anyways,
could be.
Yeah, I don't really necessarily consider ourselves as investigative journalists. Certainly, we would have to, pass much more rigorous examination, but I do think that we try our best to bring information that's accurate and that's useful for our listeners. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, and today I'm actually recording here from Hong Kong. Not many acquisitions to really speak about. I had a friendly delivery from Leo Fock, Inquisitive Quill, yesterday, so I have my first bottle of Pilot Jet Blue ink, because I didn't bring any ink to Hong Kong. So thank you very much to Inquisitive Quill. Follow him on Instagram, and also he does a good job at moderating a few Facebook groups. The Inkwell is one of them, for example. Otherwise, on your side, anything interesting?
No, not really. I think I got some pilots again, but I can't remember which one. So I'll try to remember for next episode.
That's right. But you did get a lot of interesting stuff at Maruzen, right?
I didn't for myself, but I went there and actually, yeah. Let's start from the beginning. Do you want to explain what the event was about?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this last episode too, but Maruzen, I think, for the first time in at least recent history, held an autumn event at both their Nihonbashi and their Marunouchi stores. Now, as far as I know, this is the first time that a event has simultaneously been held at both stores, which we'll get maybe a bit into that later. But there were some ohashidos, there were custom or limited edition pilots, and 2 limited edition sailors that we went pretty in depth on last time.
Right, yeah. Yes, I recall seeing maybe summer or autumn pen events in Marunouchi before, I think, but there was definitely no simultaneous one in Nihonbashi before. So, yeah, I think that maybe they changed the format this year. And to be honest, we were both, I think many people were confused because, as we mentioned in, I think maybe last episode, we got 2 like postcard flyers from them, right? And each postcard had this list of pens available, and it wasn't crystal clear that, you know, one of them was only for Marunouchi and the other one was only for Nihonbashi. It took a while for everything to make sense, to click, but yeah. So eventually we figured it out, and I think we both went to both Marunouchi and to Nihonbashi on the very first day. And I would say, based on what I saw, the Marunouchi one, to my surprise, seemed to be the bigger event, or at least the one that seemed to got most traffic, because it was not just Maruzen selling their own limited edition pens and ink, but you also had other vendors there. You had a Kawanishi Glass, you had this other glass pen maker's name I forgot now, and there was one notebook maker, and there was a lot of things going on. It felt like a normal, like, big Maruzen event at Marunouchi.
And I think also there was like more stuff happening at Marunouchi. There was a sailor, and the pilots were only at Marunouchi, right? And we know that pilots always draw the crowds. And also the 2 inks, whereas the Nihonbashi event was mostly focused on the pens, the ohashido and that other sailor. I think this time the ohashido, I mean, to be honest, it was I don't know, it looked like a tree branch that I would pick up from the park or something. It was not. Yeah, it was not my style of design, let's say.
I liked it only because it was such an unusual, distinctive design, and I think if you're already into Ohashido, which I have come to realize a lot of people are, not just in Japan, but there are definitely overseas collectors that are very hardcore into Ohashido. They have a very loyal following. I think if you already like Ohashido, you would really like this pen, but it was, as we said last time, it was definitely expensive at 110,000 yen. I don't mean it was a bad value because you had, you know, urushi and all that, but it's not an impulse buy.
No, definitely not. But I mean, at that price point, you do expect less people, right? Before we go on to the actual like products, what do you think about splitting the event into 2 like this?
I'm sure there were business reasons for them. They wanted to draw crowds to both stores, but I felt like there wasn't much going on at Nihonbashi. Maybe it was like a bit unbalanced. Maybe there were just more interesting products in Marunouchi. Maybe it was the inks, maybe it was the other vendors, but I felt like the Nihonbashi one there wasn't much going on there. So maybe it was a bit unbalanced in that sense.
That's funny because by the flyers you'd think Nihonbashi has more.
Exactly.
I kind of felt that there was no need to split the crowd like this if you were purely having a sales event. Because, I mean, as a consumer, like, I don't want to have to go to two places, right? Like, take the train again, and it's just kind of, I want to check out everything in one go. But one potential reason that I can think of is maybe they wanted to know which location is more popular when they have this kind of an event. Because the layout of the shop is different, right? Yeah. So with the Marunouchi one, you have the relatively small fountain pen area, but then right behind it, it's the paper area, and it's kind of like there's a little divider, but it's close. Whereas the Nihonbashi one, it's also next to each other, but they're very clearly separated into like different sections. So I think the strength of Marunouchi is that you could see the pens, and then like 2 steps later you can see the notebooks. And I got the Bible size refill that had 5 different types of paper in it. But but for Nihonbashi, it's like, okay, now you're looking at pens, now you're looking at paper, and it's much more clearly divided.
And I think if I remember correctly, at the big spring events in Nihonbashi, they don't just use the first basement floor, right? They actually split it up on multiple floors. At least the Shishikura, she was on like on the 3rd floor, I think, before. Right?
This year she was on the 1st floor, but Eboya and Ohashido were on the 2nd floor, and then Fujisan is on the 2nd floor, or rather the 1st floor, the ground floor. Right.
So while this time it was just on the first basement floor, right? So they used less of the space, but they split it up. But also, to be fair, I mean, it's not a great distance between Marunouchi and Nihonbashi. I walked between them. It took less than 10 minutes, so you don't need to get on the train. No,
it's not a great distance. But if you want to buy the limited stuff from both, I would much rather check it out all in one go, so that I have that security that, okay, I've been able to purchase everything. Whereas I feel like if I went to Nihonbashi first, I wouldn't be able to necessarily secure like my other stuff at the other location.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so what did you get?
For myself, I only got the 2 inks, actually. The Waka Remon ink and also the Marunouchi Oasis ink. And actually, I went back to Marunouchi 1 week later, and there were plenty of pens left, but the inks were already sold out. So I mean, obviously there's a price difference. It's not too surprising, but the inks actually sold out fairly fast. So I'm glad I managed to get them. And actually, I really like the Marunouchi Oasis ink, which is sort of a green-leaning turquoise. It's a really nice color with good shading.
Right. Yeah. I also got the inks, and I'll probably not keep the inks for myself. As I said, I got that plotter, the Bible size 5 types of paper refill thing, and I found that to be pretty cool. It's like a different type of paper tasting. I think we need more paper tasting products.
That's the Kametherior one, right? I think I've seen that one at Itoya before. They also have a Mini 5 or Micro 5 size of that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think both of us mostly got stuff for other people.
Yes. And I was a bit surprised, or I found it interesting, I should say, that I had more people asking me about the pilot than about the Shishikura sailor. And I would also say that, this is very much generalizing. There are exceptions, of course, but it seemed to me, based on a small data set, that the people who wanted the pilot were more sort of seasoned collectors, if you will.
I actually got most of my inquiries about the sailor. Big surprise. I got most of my inquiry from ladies, and I don't know if I would agree with that about like the experience, but I think what the pilot collector and what the sailor collector is looking for is totally different, because the pilot is not it's not particularly flashy. It's flashy for pilot, but it's not particularly like, it's not a cute design, right? It's not like a wow, what a funky, fun design that with glitter and shimmer and sparkly, in the same way that the sailor is very eye catching. It's very, I would say it's a very I don't know, flamboyant, but it's very shiny. It's eye catching, and it's a very cute design.
I definitely agree that the sailor is more eye catching, but I think I think the people who buy the pilot, they don't just buy it. For that reason, they don't just buy it just because of the visuals. I think you buy it partially because you understand what Maruzen is, and you like the story behind this pen and the whole thing about Renga and Marunouchi's Maruzen's history in Marunouchi. So you're not just buying a glitter pen; you are buying sort of a part of Maruzen's history.
Yeah, but that's where the pilot's value is not in, I think, the pen itself. I think the pilot's value is in the history, what it represents in pen history. But if you're a collector who is focused on your collection, right, and the aesthetics of your collection, I don't necessarily think that the pilot is particularly valuable to those people. Whereas if you're somebody who's collecting like swans and like onotos, right, then the pilot, right, the callbacks to pen history, the callback to Maruzen's origins, and even the Renga, you can see Tokyo Station from the Marunouchi store, and it's that color, right? And the chasing of that, the bricks on the nib. Yeah, I think it's a different crowd, but I'm not sure I would say that like the years of experience has anything to do with it more than what somebody wants in that collection, right?
Yeah, but I think the years of experience has something to do with it, because I think it is possible to collect all the Maruzen pilots, for example. There's like a finite number of it. They're not an insane number of it, but you can't collect all the Sailor Pro gears. There's an infinite number of them almost at this point, right? To be fair, though, there are fewer Shishikura ones, and if you just want to get to 4 seasons, you have that. But I think one reason why you want to buy this is because you already have a bunch of Maruzen pilot pens, which means you probably have been collecting for a while.
Yeah, and I think it's probably like if you're doing it for the history. Obviously, some people just really like red, so they bought the pen. But if you're doing it for the history, it is almost a bit too late to go into the pilot, right? Because if you're going in for the history, then you want to collect it from like 20 years ago, like all the different editions. So we know that the vest type urushi always really quickly sells out, and it's, again, that's not a particularly flashy pen. But it's also because people had like the blue one and the pink one and the green one. Same thing as the urushi flat tops. I think 845 that they have, right? The ones that say Maruzen and Pilot on it. Like, it's possible that if you've been collecting for 10 years, you already have the other few. If you started collecting this year, I'm sorry to say that you're probably not going to be able to find those other ones. Nobody wants to sell.
Exactly. They're very hard to find. Yeah.
If you can find it, let me know. Yeah. All right. I myself got a bunch of sailors, and honestly, this was my biggest bet ever. I bought a ton of shishikuras, and I think in total, I've sold 15% of the total quantities of the shishikuras, which blows my mind. And Jacob, so usually I don't do this, but I get like a ton of DMs about these shishikuras, and I'm like, okay, I need to get these for these fans, and so I bought in the 2 digits. I sank like $7,000 into it. My credit card bill, oh my god, like next month my credit card bill is over 1 million Japanese yen. And on the first day, I only sold half of them. And I was like, oh no, what do I do? How am I going to pay for my rent? But fortunately, within the week, basically all of my stock sold out. People went back, came back to me, asked me for more. So there's that. But overall, I think the shishikuras, maybe they're even more popular outside of Japan now. I'm not sure. But I was very relieved to hear that I managed to sell all of them.
I think you should pay a royalty to Koei. I think she has had a big part in popularizing the shishikuras outside Japan.
Well, Koei, she sold a few herself, so
yeah, I've seen that. I've seen them already arriving.
Yeah.
So
our level of investment is different. Let's put it that way. But I would call the event pretty successful.
I hope there's still. I don't know what this means for the spring event. I hope they're still gonna do the normal big spring event. I'm not sure if this limits their ability to plan and produce limited editions, but I hope it won't be. So I'm looking forward to the spring.
Yeah, and we are supposed to get the summer edition of the Shishikura, I guess relatively maybe next year. I think they were supposed to. I think there was talks about releasing both of them this year, but then obviously they went with the Saihyo and the Hoshimizora this year. So probably next year we're going to see the summer edition. I'm very happy for this capsule collection to be over. It's a lot of pressure.
But it seems unlikely to me that Shishikura will just stop after the summer. I'm sure it's going to be just another collection, another series starting after this, and I wonder what that will be.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be another series, but I think for me personally, the transparent cap and opaque body, I wish that it was the reverse, a opaque cap and a transparent body. For me, that's.
I'm surprised by that because I don't think transparent bodies work on sailors or Pro Gears because personally I don't like seeing the converter. I don't mind the transparent cap. I don't mind seeing the nib, but I think it just looks ugly when you have a translucent or transparent body and you see the converter or the cartridge sitting there.
I think the difference is that. When you ink the pen and you use it and you carry it around, the ink gets into the cap. I think it's unavoidable, right? And that bothers me. Whereas in the body, it's in the converter or the cartridge or whatever you have, so the ink doesn't get everywhere. So I'm more fine with that. Personally, for my own personal use, I'd rather have a Rialo, so we wouldn't have that problem to begin with.
So I think there are transparent Realos, like on some Shumibun editions.
Yes, I have it.
My question about that is, do the transparent Realos still have that ink window? I like already reusing that.
Yes.
That molding. Okay.
They do have the ink windows. I bought one, I think last year. I heavily modified it. I frosted it. I changed around parts on it. You know, just very heavily modified. I really like it. I brought it to Hong Kong with me this time around as well. But yes, it does have the ink.
But even with a piston filler, you have this sort of ugly part of the piston near the end. So I think what we're really saying is that what sailors should do is a translucent like the vac filler or a syringe filler
Or a gradient body.
Perfect,
like the
perfect.
The mil colore that they had, right? With the 3 parts.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty funny.
And now discontinued, but yeah.
I don't necessarily mind the piston. I think it actually looks nice because I like to see it at work. But I can see where you're coming from. All right. We spent a lot of time on Maruzen. Surprisingly, Maruzen is not the main event that we want to talk about today.
Right. Yes. So I went to this Inku-numa show today. So we have talked about Inku-numa a few times. So this is now an annual event held by Bungo Joshi, who's also known for their annual huge Bungo Joshi Haku in the winter. And I think we recently talked about how they changed the format a little bit of this Inku-numa event this year because the venue was changed to a department store, so this Odakyu department store in Shinjuku. And I think if I remember correctly, initially they weren't even planning on selling tickets because I remember we were talking about how they're going to do crowd control if you don't sell tickets, if everyone's going to join. Go there at the same time, and I think they realized that given the extended and still ongoing state of emergency, this was a recipe for a disaster and a super spreader event, right? So they did change the formula. So in the end, you did have to buy a ticket. You have to buy a ticket in advance from Lawson or whatever. And you have to choose a time slot. So just like at Tips last year and just like at Inku-numa last year, you had to choose from I think there were 3 or 4 time slots every day. And when you bought a ticket, you not only did you get a time slot, but you got like a series, like a number within that time slot. So then when you went there, there was a specific place where you had to line up given your series number. So it was all very well organized to make sure not everyone was lining up early and so on. And of course, because they had these time slots, they prevented all the overcrowding. So it was actually quite well organized. But the first thing you noticed when you entered like the main hall, like the venue, was that this was not an ink specific event, because like the first thing you saw was like a half a dozen tables with nothing but washi tape.
Well, it's also in the name though, right?
Yeah. To be fair, it's in the name because it's called like Inku-numa, I think. So like ink and like washi tape decoration event, right? So you had to walk a bit to even find the tables with pens and inks, but eventually you found them. So Sailor was there with a usual lineup. To be honest, Sailor's tables are usually quite boring at this event. Yeah. They bring the regular Ink Studio inks, they bring the Fude Mannen, some converters, and they also had like 2 or 3 lines of inks that they always bring to these events. So you had these Izakaya inks, they had this Shabetto inks, and then there's and one other series, but it's always the same. So there's never anything new at a Sailor table. So I skipped the Sailor table for that reason. So Twisby was there, Pelle Penna, or however you pronounce it. I think there's this store in Kansai somewhere. They had a big table with lots of glass pens and ink. Yurindo was there with a lot of new inks I'd never seen before. They sold out in an instant, of course. Bungo Joshi had its own table with its Bungo Joshi inks, including that melon soda or cream soda ink. That one sold out very fast. In fact, the first thing I saw when I went to...
I told you there was a melon soda trend. It's insane.
Yeah, so I went there and there were like 3 people looking at that like bookshelf with all the ink, and while 3 people were looking, there was someone coming in like a crane and just grabbing the last bottle of that ink and then like quickly running away. Those inks were very popular for sure. And then Mita Club was there, and they brought their scented inks, and they also had that, what's it called, a green pen, the shooting star or something.
Yeah, Inku-numa. Was it Inku-numa?
Right, and something like that, yeah. And then Nagasawa was there, and they interestingly still had those super tri-inks. You remember that blue and that pink super tri-inks from like last year? They still had them. And they also had this new line of onomatope inks.
Yeah.
And they had various pens, including that some rose-colored Pro-Gear and some other stuff. But my main motivation for going there was not the inks, but paper. Because as we talked about early this week, I think maybe on the first day of the event, Sakae Technical Paper, they tweeted that they were launching a new brand called Paper. And an all-new product within that brand called Irofuru or Iroful, which was an all-new paper product. And they did like the pre-release at the ink show, and later on it's going to be available elsewhere. And of course, and given what we talked about Tomoe River discontinuation and Sakae Technical Paper's plans for replacement products and so on, obviously I had questions for them, so I went quickly to Sakae Technical Paper to ask them about this announcement and the new ink. So my very first question to Sakae Technical Paper was, given that you announced a few months ago that you were discontinuing old Tomoe River product and that you were working on a replacement product, my first question is this Iroful, is this it? Is this your replacement product? And the answer was no, it's not. This is not their Tomoe. Yes, this is not the Tomoe River replacement. This is a whole separate product they're going to be selling side by side with both Tomoe River and whatever is going to replace Tomoe River. So this new paper is a bit thicker. It's 75 GSM, and initially it's only available as loose sheets. They were selling like A5 size and A4 size loose sheets, and they couldn't tell me exactly when this is going to be generally available, but they said sometime after this event. And then starting next year they're going to be selling notebooks with this new paper. But again, this is not the Tomoe River replacement. Yeah. So this is not the Tomoe River replacement. So then I have to ask them, given that you were announcing that you are working on the replacement, what can you tell me about that? Can you tell me, which company you're working with? Can you tell me, what's going on? And they said, yeah, we are working with Tomogawa. We're still working with Tomogawa. And it's not so much like a collaboration as we are because we are just like, we as in Sakae Technical Paper, we are selling, like we are kind of asking them to develop something that would replace an old Tomoe River. And initially that was it. That was all they were willing to tell me. But then I told them about what I heard. I told them that I had contacted Tomogawa directly, and I told them exactly what they had told me, and they were amused and surprised by that, because they thought some of that was like
right, you're just secret. A random gaijin.
Yeah. But I assured them and I showed them that they had told me that I got explicit permission to post this on blogs and so on. After showing them that, they were willing to tell me actually a bit more specifics. Now, I can't tell you the specifics here on the podcast, but I'm going to say one thing, and that is, if you are a fan of old Tomoe River, then there's good reason to be at least cautiously optimistic.
That's good.
Don't give up. Don't give up on Tomoe River yet. All right. That's all I can say on the record on the podcast.
That's very interesting. Why did they create this Irofuru product then? I don't understand.
I think, it wasn't clear from the description, but I think this is more like, if you look at the way they like the ad copy and the way they explain this product. It seems more specifically about just showing off ink, and it's very telling that it's just loose sheets at this point. I think this is paper for, the Inku-numa crowd with their glass pens and their like 500 toner limb inks. So it's less about planner paper or journaling paper. This is this is when you want to try your shimmering inks and you don't mind slightly thicker paper.
Okay. So you're telling me that it's thicker, so they don't think it's going to be planner paper, but they still think it's going to be great for fountain pens there, and for their collaboration with Tomoe River, it's going to still focus on like techo paper, whereas for this one, it's going to be like more general use notebook.
Yeah, this is like Inku-numa paper. You're testing your toner limb things at home with your glass pen. That's sort of what I read into it. Because if you look at the photos also, the way they talk about this is like the main selling point is how ink looks on the paper.
But isn't that the main selling point of Tomoe River?
Well, I think you can argue that the thinness is part of it too, because I mean, if you're selling a notebook with over 200 pages and it's still relatively thin, right? That is a selling point.
So
I think.
I think there's going to be a split in the community because the complaint about Tomoe River is always that the show through is terrible.
Yes.
This is the reason why people like the 68 GSM. Because still got Tomoe River, it feels a little bit different, but the show through is okay. Yeah. With the 75, you'll have great ink properties, I assume.
Yeah.
And hopefully it won't show through. So this feels more like a general fountain pen lovers paper than Tomoe River. I actually foresee this to eat into a lot of Tomoe River's sales, if it works.
Possibly. I have some more. I'll talk a bit more about the paper in a minute, but before then, I had some more questions about Tomoe River. I got a bit more information from them about Tomoe River. First of all, I told them, I know that the only product that you're selling today with new Tomoe River paper is this loose sheets that you call new machinery paper. So my question is, why haven't you made any notebooks or any more products with a new Tomoe River paper? And the guy just said, the paper is not as good. That was the gist of it. It surprised me a bit that he was so straightforward with that. But yeah, he said, we don't think the paper is as good.
Can you repeat what he said in Japanese?
Now, I can't remember like word for word, but I think he used the word shitori to describe like the property that he liked about old Tomoe River.
Right. Okay. All right, yeah.
So that
go ahead.
That I found very interesting. And also I asked them, given that you don't have any replacement yet, and given that you're now introducing this new product, and that you still have Tomoe River under this new paper like umbrella brand, do you foresee selling Tomoe River for quite some time? Do you have enough stock to be able to sell Tomoe River for foreseeable future? And he said no, we are almost running out of Tomoe River.
Okay, so they need to move quickly on this on the new Tomoe River.
Yeah. So they don't have that much left. They still have some 68 GSM, but that is only cream color, which I think some of the fountain pen and glass pen enthusiasts might not like. I think that's more meant for, planner use. Like we know, for example, that Da Vinci is selling 68 GSM, so it's not quite the same.
Yeah. So I have a question.
The cream colored. Yeah.
So, Irofuru, is that a cream colored paper? Because it looks cream to me.
I didn't really test the paper while I was at the event because I was more interested in getting as much information as I could out of the guy, and I had limited time with other people there. So I bought some paper and I brought it back home, of course, and I done some testing this afternoon. And my first impression when I tested this Iruful paper is, this seems familiar. I've seen this before. So I did some more comparisons. I did some more tests. And now I would say I am almost entirely certain that Iruful is 75 GSM Cosmere Light.
I need to sell my stock of Irufuru.
I am almost entirely certain. The color, you're right, it's slightly off-white cream color. That sort of almost plasticky texture. At least I call it like spongy, which makes sense because, you can have two 75 GSM papers with different like height, right? Because the density can be different. And I think with Cosmere Light, part of the that writing experience comes from the fact that the paper has a relatively low density. I believe it's kind of like fluffy, spongy, right? And this Iruful paper has exactly the same property. And I tried with a few inks and I compared side by side. It looks exactly the same. I am certain that Iruful is Cosmere Light.
Jacob, you're making me very disappointed right now. I'm very sad. I have to burn my stock of Irufuru.
I could be wrong. If it's not the same, then they have made something that is very similar. And yeah, you're gonna hate this because if you don't like how a Cosmere, the feeling when you write in Cosmere Light, you're not gonna like Iruful.
I'm gonna take it back. This paper is not gonna cut into the sales of Tomoe River at all. Garbage paper. I'm very disappointed. All right, next topic.
Well, sorry, I have just one more thing about this ink event I wanted to talk about. So I had told myself I wouldn't buy any ink because I have too much ink and I need to show like restraint.
And that's what happens right before you buy ink.
That has. But in my defense, I only bought one, and it was one that I just couldn't resist. So Nagasawa had this ink called Rise Up Rikuzen Takata, or Gambappeshi Rikuzen Takata, which is not a new ink for this event. I think they launched it earlier this year, but I didn't know about it until now. But I had to get that one because because of the story. So I think maybe you know this, but Rikuzen Takata is probably the city that is hardest hit, or one of the cities that was hardest hit by the tsunami back in 2011. The whole city was basically like wiped off the map almost. Like there was almost nothing left, except for one lone pine tree near the beach, which is now called the Ippon Matsu, or the Miracle Pine. So before the tsunami, there was this big forest of thousands of pine trees near the seaside, and all but one got destroyed, swept away by the tsunami. So this one lone surviving pine tree became sort of the symbol of hope after the tsunami, and that's also now on the label. And the reason, one of the reasons why Nagasawa has made an ink about this is that Nagasawa is based in Kobe, right? And of course, Kobe has its own experience with natural disaster. It was hit very hard by the Great Hanshin earthquake back in 1994. So there's this sort of friendship kizuna going on between Kobe and Rikuzen Takata. And for me, it was also a bit special because I actually went to Rikuzen Takata shortly after the tsunami, and I went to this shelter and I brought some clothes and stuff together with other friends. We brought that to the shelters there, and I actually went to the seaside and I saw this. I have photos of this Ippon Matsu. So for me, that was something very personal. So I had to get ink for that reason.
Yeah, all right. And after hearing that does make a lot of sense, like why you would want to buy that.
Yeah, the ink itself is, to be honest, is not that remarkable. It's sort of an orangey, kind of yellow-orange ink, but it could be black for all I cared. I just liked it for the name and for the label and for the story. So that is my one ink purchase from the event. Meanwhile, Alessa, who was there for the second time, she went earlier this week. She bought a whole bunch of inks again.
Nice. So overall, was the event fun? I mean, I wasn't able to go, but did you enjoy that?
So I would say you didn't have nearly as much of these Gotoji inks that we talked about last time, because last year's show was more ink focused, right? You have some of these regional stores that rarely come to Tokyo otherwise. You didn't have them this time. But yeah, I think the focus makes sense. It looked like there were a lot of people there. I know that yesterday's tickets were all sold out, so I think the concept works, and I still got enough out of the event that I'm happy.
That's good. I mean, I wish I could have gone as well, but I remember we both saying, "Oh, we don't know if we're gonna go," but
right,
new products. I'm still reeling over Irofuru, but it sounds like it was a blast.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready to go to our next topic?
Let's do that.
So, we covered this Moonman Kaweiko Mahjong thing a few weeks back, and
yeah.
At the time, Moonman was saying, Kaweiko was saying that, Moonman's T1 copied our Kaweiko Sport shape, even though they had applied for a trademark on the shape. The EU court said that it was not distinctive enough for them to own that trademark, and so they just went out and bought the name of Moonman instead, which, regardless of whether you think the T1 is too similar or not to Kaweiko, I just don't think that is what you do as a competitor. Like, as a rival or whatever it is, right? Like, it's just not something that you do. So they got a lot of flack about it. A few months later, Kaweiko comes out with the Kaweiko RS1. Jacob, do you want to tell our readers what the RS1 is?
Well, the headline is that this is a revenge pen. That's how I describe it. Because this is basically a Kaweiko Sport. And it's made out of titanium, I believe.
Yes.
Right? And I think they're saying in the description, well, I can't read Chinese, but you were translating for me, and I think they were saying something to the effect of, this is higher quality than, the German equivalent or something like that. And then, as we, I think, mentioned in recent episode, they have now changed the logo and tagline to says design period made in China, which is just a version of Lame's design period made in Germany, right? So it's the one word that describes this pen is revenge.
I think it's hilarious because this is almost a little bit like Chinese humor. It's like, oh, you don't like what we're doing? We're going to do it more. See how you like it then, and we're going to do it better. And
yeah.
So I'm looking up, and I have it here. I'm subscribed to their WeChat page, which, by the way, is still Moonman Pen. But the logo on top says Mahjong. And it says, superior to the same German model using titanium alloy. And they don't mention Kaweiko at all. But I thought that the headline was just hilarious. And this pen is different from the Kaweiko in the sense that it has like little rivets. And I'm okay with the rivets. I'm not too sure about that like tab. That's not my favorite thing. The rivets I think look kind of cool. They're saying like, oh, it's airplane quality material. It's like anti-rust, etc. And I'm scrolling down. It says light 50%. It doesn't say what the 50% is in comparison to. But it says like 軽さ equal 50%. And I think they're, we know who they're talking about. We know who they're talking about. Interestingly, this pen comes in both steel and 14K.
I noticed that too, and I can't remember having seen. Maybe I'm just forgetting about it, but I can't remember having seen Moonman pens with gold nibs. Other than that, so there was one with this, like usually the one with hooded nibs tend to have this new old stock nibs, which are often like 12K as well. I remember there was one of those, but I can't remember having seen a recent or any Moonman with a 14K, like a normal like open nib.
Right. Yeah. I agree. Did you look at this 14K nib though? It's very peculiar. So the tine slit is not connected to the breather hole.
Yeah, I see. And the breather hole is unusually large, isn't it?
Yeah. And the second thing is, and maybe I'll send you the direct link, but if you look at the SE BUY, the one that you linked in our show notes, you click into the page. One of the first items is Hero H712 10K gold fountain pen. And the fourth image is an image of a 10K nib. And this image, with the exception of the breather hole being a bit being connected to the tines, it has the exact same engravings.
But it's 10K, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And
there's a history of Chinese pens being, the Chinese pens with gold nibs being like 10 or 12K instead of 14K.
In Germany, there were 12K and like 20K as well. Older Pelicans, you can find that. 10K, I think they probably just wanted to save on gold, but I'm not sure how effective that is in terms of like corrosion resistance and stuff like that. But
right.
And the point here is that I always thought Moonman was owned by Shanghai Jingdian, whereas Hero is a different company. I mean, Hero is a very old company, right? It has a very long history. So I'm actually pretty curious to see how similar these nibs are. I would even say that they are the same. Who knows? Maybe there's some kind of consolidation going on in the Chinese market. We're not studied enough to really, do an analysis on that, Jacob. But it's might be time for you to go back to buying only Chinese pens.
Maybe I should do that again. But one thing we can say is that we've seen this Instagram account from what seems to be Chinese OEM factories. And they claim that they are producing pens for Moonman and Namisu and Narwhal and a whole bunch of other brands that you think of as either Chinese or Western. So I wouldn't be surprised if the nibs are actually made by a third party and they're just combining it.
That's true. That's very true. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. The price is the same price, almost the same price as the Kaweco Sport. At least from this third retailer. I'm sure you can get it cheaper on like AliExpress or like Taobao or something. But from SE BUY, it's the same price as the Kaweco Brass Sport. And that's for the steel nib model. So, Moonman is kind of saying, you know what, bring it on. We'll take you head on. And I was telling you this earlier, not on the podcast. I was telling you how I find it so interesting that Moonman has no marketing department. They have no advertising. They basically, if you don't know, you wouldn't know about Moonman outside of the Chinese market. And yet, Kaweco is saying that they're such a big damage to their sales. That's just so interesting to me. So we'll see what happens with this RS1. Personally, I don't really find the appeal of this pen. I think it's a bit too short. I'm going to stick with my Moonman T1s, but we'll see if once this is an actual like lookalike copy, right? This is an actual copy. We'll see the popularity between the two, whether the weight thing makes a difference, or whether the titanium thing makes a difference. One thing that I would be excited is that you can anodize titanium, so you can possibly get like a bunch of different super colorful pens, or Cerakote them. So that could be a cool thing for people who want to like mod their pens afterwards. That could be a cool option.
I think it's very interesting that a pen is so expensive for a Moonman, and I'm sure there are reasons for it. I'm sure it's more expensive to use titanium and so on. But the choice to make a relatively expensive pen is interesting, because to me that says, I think that plays into this whole like revenge aspect. Like, we're not going to make it cheap, and we're just going to make a pen that is clearly superior to a Kaweco Sport.
Except it's exactly the same. Exactly. So I'm pretty curious. Should I get one? I'm very tempted now. I'm very, very tempted. Maybe, and you can probably eyedrop this.
Could you? That would make it interesting, yeah.
You can definitely eyedrop this, because I see a place where you can put an O-ring.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's the Moonman RS1.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to round it off with the Fika sailors?
Yeah, sure, but I don't have the announcement in front of me, so can you start by explaining what is this?
Sure. So, Sailor USA always commissions a bunch of different pens, and from what I can tell, what Sailor USA likes to do is that they like to commission the pens in all the sizes. So they like to do like the slim, the normal size, and then the King of Pen. So a lot of these King of Pen sized like special editions actually comes from Sailor USA, which is interesting because usually the US doesn't get stuff that we don't get in Japan.
Right.
But this time, from what I'm seeing, it actually looks like they are... It actually looks like this is from Sailor Japan that's trying to do this, and then they're trying to push it on Sailor USA. So that's the interesting first part. The second thing is that you were mentioning about the colors. So we have this blue one, which actually does have a slightly translucent but dark blue body, and that's the one that comes in the King of Pen and the Pro Gear. No slim size, but they do have a ballpoint. And then you have this red one, which is the slim size, and then they have a ballpoint pen there too as well, which is also the slim size. So I didn't know there was a slim ballpoint, which makes no sense to me. And then they have a tea time ink, which looks like it's 20 milliliters. So
right,
they're doing this this, I guess, Swedish / Danish inspired release now. As a Swede, what do you think?
First of all, I think here in Japan at least there's a like Scandinavian sort of trend going on. It's been going on for a while. A lot of like shops and brands with like fake Scandinavian names. So it's not surprising to me that Sailor Japan would do something like this. I'm more surprised that Sailor or maybe Itoei US would do something like this. So it makes me wonder if perhaps this was initiated or by Sailor Japan, or at least the concept was
initiated by Japan,
originated here. That's my first thought. My second thought is, if you just see these two pens, and you're asked, what do you think is, the concept here, the idea behind it? You would not in a million years guess what it was.
Well, I'm not very familiar with like the concept to begin with. I think the red is a bit like strange.
So the blue or sort of purple royal blue one is meant to look like, Swedish porcelain. There are brands like Gustavsberg, which I'm sure no one in Japan can pronounce, that makes, cups that looks kind of like this. But there are actually a lot of other things that have these colors. So it's not the first thing you think about when you see these colors. The other one is meant to look like hallongrottor, which is this kind of pastry with like raspberry jam in it. So the color here is just the raspberry jam part of it.
See, what I like about it is that they're doing a King of Pen in a different color. The longest time, people are complaining, no interesting King of Pens. Well, now you have an interesting King of Pen. I see the porcelain aspect of the blue one. I think if they had the blue cap and maybe like a white body, that would be better. I mean, in the image, there's like white, right? Whereas this is just blue. So the dark blue doesn't really make so much sense to me. But otherwise, I think the blue works. I think it's a very fantastic color. It actually looks like the same material as the tag exclusive. On
yeah. What was it called? Like a Ruriro or whatever it was. I remember that one.
And I think that was a pretty nice color.
Yeah, but the red one seems like something you've seen before.
Yeah, the red one I'm not a big fan of.
But I think it's also, I don't see any prices here. Maybe these are more affordable than store exclusives. But I think it's a little bit boring that they did not do anything with the nib. So by comparison, if you get like a Kingdom Note or a Hachimonja or Pento Note or Bang Box, you get usually like a custom nib engraving. You get something interesting with the finials. Here is just different body color, body and cap color, and nothing else, which is kind of boring.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, but if I think about the market, I don't know if it matters enough for them to do something with the nib engraving. Especially on the King of Pen, I don't think I've seen a special engraving on the King of Pen before. I've seen the special plating, but never an engraving.
Yeah, the only King of Pens I've seen with custom engravings have been these Sailor Anniversary ones that have been very expensive.
Yeah.
So that's very unusual.
So I'm looking at the... and by the way, these are limited. The King of Pen is limited to 400, and it's $760 US dollars for the King of Pen, which I think is actually fairly reasonable. If you consider the rest of their lineup, right? The Pro Gear is $310.
Yeah, and that might explain why you have the normal basic finials and the standard nibs. So yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, but it only comes in M and MF, which is I actually think it's okay because that means you can swap out the nibs for a more interesting nib. The slim size is $176, so I think the slim size one is a bit expensive, but I think the regular Pro Gear that's fairly reasonable. Yeah. All right, and with that, I think that's been the episode. Anything else that you want to add, Jacob?
Just very quickly talk about one more Sailor announcement that is kind of interesting. So they are now selling empty ink bottles. So we recently talked about these new, what we call it, the Minamo ink. There's a new set of 3 ink bottles in, this was a new 10 ml bottle, and now they're selling empty 10 ml bottles. So you can buy them separately for around like 600 yen, or you can buy them, I think, in a pack of 6 with some kind of box. The other thing that's interesting about empty ink bottles is that you can order extra like labels for them. I'm not sure if you can order any kind of printing on the labels, but you can order extra labels. So to me, this sounds like Sailor's response to Tamiya bottles, which are now so very popular in Japan. But the problem is, of course, that while the Sailor ink bottles are like 600 yen, Tamiya, you can usually get the Tamiya bottles for less than 100 yen. So they are quite expensive for empty bottles.
Yeah, it's like 6 times the price. It's obviously like pretty controversial. Yeah. I don't know if 10 milliliters is still a lot for a sample. I don't know.
It is, but it's interesting that Sailor is kind of encouraging like sharing of inks. You would think that they would not be in favor of that. You would think that they would rather like sell smaller, like ink in smaller bottles, so everyone buys their own bottles. But here clearly they are encouraging people to share ink, because it even says that in the ad copy that you can use this to share ink with your friends.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see if this will pop up on Mercari soon. I think that's been the episode. Thank you everybody so much again for listening to us ramble on for more than an hour. If you like the show, please share it with your friends on Instagram, on TikTok, on your Facebook groups, on Reddit. Tell everybody about Tokyo Inklings. Tell them how what you think about the show. Just let people know that this exists, and hopefully we want to get the word out there. We want to grow the podcast, and once we're able to do that, we'll have our Q&A only session, maybe.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right, and with that, that's been episode 41. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at Tokyo Station Pens, and on Twitter at Tokyo Station MNH.
And my name is Jacob, and I am Foodafan on Instagram, and on Twitter I have a blog at foodafan.com.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.